So those are some of the things that I do at this point in my career if I'm preparing for a performance or preparing for a recital.
So many of those overlap with stuff in my world. I mean, we use the play it and move the metronome up by one click thing all the time because you don't even feel it.
Practicing a classical piece.
Yeah, you trick yourself into learning how to do it. The other thing I find so interesting is I'm guessing anyway that every once in a while you catch yourself using the same little idea or riff or time waster, or I'm not sure what else to play. So this. And it's almost like that moment is what propels you to go and rethink and listen and discover something new. And it's almost like this crazy balance because you have to do it enough to get good at it. And then if it's really good and you love it, you depend on it and you use it. And then eventually you overuse it. And now it propels you to go find totally other solutions. And I just find that I encounter that all the time.
Yeah, I don't know if you've encountered this, but I always encourage my students to try to practice past the point of boredom. You know, whatever the exercise is. If the exercise is, oh, I'm going to hit the third on the downbeat every chord, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's something that we would practice in jazz. And so you can do that, like you said, until you find some patterns that you know work, and you kind of, you get there. And if you're a good, dutiful jazz musician who, like you said about yourself, has a short attention span, gets bored easily, what you want to do is you want to keep practicing that same exercise until you start forcing yourself into different solutions, right? Mm-hmm. And I find that really valuable because I feel like I can get to the point where I can kind of phone something in, but then I get to the interesting stuff once I have those patterns, but make a very conscious choice not to use them or to avoid them. And that's where I find the real magic of my practice sessions, is when I get past the point of that, standard thing, that thing that kind of bores me a little bit.
And all of that assumes just this huge amount of time that you have to put in. It's just so expensive for time. I did learn early on as when I was a purely classical musician in undergrad, I learned to protect my practice time. I had it blocked out and highlighted, in my daily schedule, and nothing else was allowed to come and mess with that. Because if you don't have that, you don't have anything.
Yeah, and I'm not exactly sure why this is occurring to me now, but just to bring back something earlier in the conversation, one thing that I say to my students, and I say in the introduction to my upcoming book, we've talked about becoming a native speaker of a foreign language. And I guess, I was thinking about it because you're talking about the massive amount of time, and, think about how much time it takes you. If you set out today to learn French, I don't know if you speak French, but hypothetically, you have to truly immerse yourself if you're going to become a native speaker. It's not a matter of you just get to take a semester of French class, right? You'll know a little bit of French after a semester of French class, but you have to take 4 semesters, and then you have to go there and study abroad and immerse yourself and talk every day. But to me, that's to just do it. When I hear in my world, Miles Davis or Bill Evans or Oscar Peterson or Keith Jarrett, these people are not just speakers of this language, these people are poets, right? So not only are they speakers of the language, but they've so mastered this language, and they have such incredible souls that they're bringing new ways of using it, new art forms, new rhythms, new coinages, and so, it's this whole process of you have to master the language, immerse yourself, and then, be an artist, right? Be like a true artist. And of course, you can be a great jazz improviser and, not be of that same incredible, soulful, original level as Thelonious Monk or Bill Evans. But I think we all want to aim that high, right? That's what the world needs. It doesn't need a schlub like me being like, hey, I can play some 2-5-1s. It needs these people with incredibly original voices and incredibly original experiences to make these great contributions that keep us excited to be alive. So, it's a matter of immersing yourself and then also finding something original to say. at least in my world. Would you say the same is true in your world?
It really is. You have to spend the time where you follow in the footsteps and you learn the basics, and there's a lot of rote stuff. There's one thing we do called rule of the octave, which is just a bass ascending descending scale, major and minor, that has a given harmonization to every scale degree. And it's kind of a default basic functional language of classical music. And if you use that to accompany like arias and just, simple stuff, it would sound totally correct. I was at a concert at the Lithuanian Academy. The string department had a concert, and someone was doing a very virtuosic violin piece by Sarasate. And I just started laughing because everything that happened was this basic language. Like, if the bass is this, then these are the upper voices. If the bass moves to here, do this. The entire thing was just this default language, which cracked me up because, apparently all the intelligence went into the violin part, and the accompaniment was written at like a student level. So anyway, everyone learns rule of the octave, and they don't go on until their rule of the octave is absolutely flawless. When I've taught Partimento class, they don't get to come to the first day of class until they can do RO, we call it RO, in every key, ascending, descending, with a metronome, no mistakes. They don't even get to join the class until they can do that. But yeah, eventually RO just becomes something you used to do a lot when you were a student. And now you have all this constellation of options and solutions. And the creativity is in how you combine and alter and play with all the variables. That's really where they.
Let me ask you a question, and I know we probably need to wrap up somewhat soon, so feel free to cut me off. But that gives me kind of an interesting thought, which is that one of the things that happens a lot in jazz education is that we take different eras of jazz. And, as a student, especially, if you're a really good student, you kind of learn how to play a little bit, at least, in the style of each of these eras and the style of different pianists. You learn some amount of stride piano, and to play like James P. Johnson or Teddy Wilson or Fats Waller. You learn, how to play in a Count Basie style big band and how to imitate that, maybe a little bit of boogie woogie. You learn Bill Evans' style, maybe some Oscar Peterson, some Monk, and then you go into the modal era and you learn McCoy Tyner's style. And then, a lot of pianists these days are super interested in people like Brad Meldau and Robert Glasper and, all these folks. And then the theory of the case, at least, is that our best musicians take all of those influences, kind of put them into a blender, and out comes an original artist, right? And I think it's good. I think that's how everybody learns. Right? You have to imitate before you can then go and make something new. If you're just trying to invent your own thing without having done the work, then you're probably not going to come up with something that has a lot of substance to it. But I guess my question for you, because I know you're talking about this single school, but I imagine now you're writing about the fugue, you're talking about a bunch of different styles, eras, approaches. Is it legit, for lack of a better word, to then come in and have an original approach that combines some things from the 16th century, some things from the 17th century? Or do you feel like, these are historical practices that should kind of remain in isolation, right? And then, of course, if you broke out into bebop in the middle of that, like, is there that mixture? Like, is that possible, or would that kind of be against the rules here?
I think I'm afraid of the same thing you're afraid of, which is just this bizarre, cheesy mishmash that has no logical common thread. So no, I really wouldn't start with a Bach fugue type of thing and then go into a boogie woogie. That to me is, if somebody else wants to do it,
that's a ridiculous example.
But, yeah,
there are things that are more adjacent that, just like we could mix Monk and Bud Powell and it wouldn't raise any eyebrows. Like, is that a thing that people can kind of mix some of these styles, or are they really pretty separate?
You can, and especially when they're adjacent, that usually is historically real, because that's how people always have been. They took a little of what they did yesterday and a little of today, and here's something that might happen tomorrow. And, so if you're playing along in a very strict 18th century style, like an earlier Germanic 18th century style, and suddenly you throw in an augmented sixth chord, some people are going to go, what? And other people are not even going to notice because they wouldn't detect the differences between those styles. So, it's a matter of personal preference. I think the thing that really happens is maybe less in terms of putting things together in the same piece and more in terms of you get this view of how they thought and how they developed their abilities in that era and this era and in jazz. And you start to become a really good problem solver in different styles of music. You start to realize very quickly, if I'm going to go on stage and I want to do this particular style, here are the things that had better be nailed down in my head. Mm-hmm. So I do some contemporary improvisation on the same programs. Like I'll improvise on Don't Tell Anyone, but I'm gonna do Play That Funky Music, White Boy. And what I'm thinking about, what I'm thinking about is like the way that Meldau would take a song that may or may not really have a great set of changes, and instead he'll take rhythmic motifs or melodic motives and string those together in this harmonically free thing. And I'm very interested in that with one of these riff-based kind of funky sounding songs, because the rhythmic element is so strong and so recognizable. And we haven't really talked about audience recognizing moments, but that's an incredibly important thing. And actually, I find that I'm drawing on the historic stuff all the time. Even though you don't have to treat dissonance the same way, the idea of inside and outside playing is sort of analogous to that. Like, how long do I want to set up this jarring sound? And then when do I want to provide a tonal relief from it? And they very much speak to each other, these different styles. So it's just a little bit harder to explain how, maybe sometimes.
The inside-outside analogy makes total sense to me. And mm-hmm. I mean, we could simplify basically everything in music to being tension and release, right?
Yeah.
And I think the point that you're making, in some, don't let me put words in your mouth, but on some level, is one of the things that defines different eras and different styles is what kinds of tensions are allowed,
right,
and how long and in what ways we can release them, right? And so whether that's, in the context of, well, a 4/3 suspension is a lot of tension, right? Or whether it's in like, wow, playing a half step above the chord is a lot of tension, those things remain constant. And if you can be intentional about the ways that you're creating tension, regardless of the style, then you start being able to play, again, I guess, very intentional, and you're going to have a lot more control. I think is that kind of what you're saying?
Absolutely. And, I would hesitate to say that I know anything universal in music that covers all ages. And, none of us knows that. But I think this idea of tension and release is as close as we can get. It's very interesting. A lot of the Italian treatises from the 18th century would start with a single statement. First sentence in them was, music is made of consonance and dissonance. That is the recipe of music. And the rest of the treatise is not theoretical at all. It's very practical. It's not philosophical. They were not into that. They just wanted to get you playing. But they would take time to say this one thing. And I find that absolutely fascinating, because that's what I'm hearing in Keith Jarrett and Bill Evans and Brad Meldau, and in your playing too. You're very, very aware of this, because you're this literary guy and you write these kind of art songy things, and to have the human voice on a certain syllable just like lean into a thing that's kind of ouch, and then there it's released. I mean, that's totally a part of your music.
Yeah, I'd say it's a part of anybody's music is just, managing, and, not just harmonically, but rhythmically, tension, and tension in terms of, we imagine higher notes as more tense because on most instruments, it's more difficult to go higher, right? I've been working on ballads with a lot of my students and talking about some of my heroes and how they'll, on a ballad solo, they'll do something that's harmonically kind of a little bit out, rhythmically accelerates, and then goes up the piano kind of all at once to provide this kind of like, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. To use, I don't know about all, but to use many of these, and usually they're also crescendoing, decrescendoing, right? Another like way that we, kind of tonally, volume wise, however you want to classify that, create tension and release. So, I think that that's at the core of just about all music, but maybe not some modern stuff.
Yeah.
But I think on some level, it's got to be there. John, I feel like I could talk to you all day, and this hour has flown by.
Yeah. Why did you move to the West Coast so we can't hang out as much? I have not forgiven you for that little move.
Well, there's a lot of room for you here.
Okay.
I can't tell you that it's cheap, but the weather's good.
Yep. So I hear. It's so great to talk to you, Jeremy, and to catch up a little bit. And
likewise.
Look forward to
see you again soon.
Yep. Talk to you next time. Goodbye, my friend.
All right, sounds good.